You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
And now, a word from our sponsor, Cortex. Security teams face a barrage of more security tools create more complexity, more devices need protection, more specialized focus areas create more silos. The security landscape is changing fast. How can security operations transform to meet current threats? Cortex by Palo Alto Networks consolidates SecOps tools into an integrated platform and helps organizations stop threats at scale with AI, automation, and analytics. Learn more at paloaltonetworks.com/Cortex. A critical vulnerability has been discovered in the NVIDIA Container Toolkit. Representatives from around the world are meeting in Washington to address ransomware. The Pentagon shoots down the notion of a separate cyber service. A genetic testing company leaves sensitive information in an unsecured folder. A public accounting firm breach affects 127,000 individuals. The DOJ charges a British national with hacking U.S. companies. California's governor vetoes an AI safety bill. CISOs deserve a seat at the table. Tim Starks from CyberScoop describes the House Homeland Security Chair's proposed cyber workforce bill. And password laziness leaves routers vulnerable. It's Monday, September 30th, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Happy Monday, and thank you for joining us here today. A critical vulnerability has been discovered in NVIDIA Container Toolkit, posing a major risk to AI applications that rely on it for GPU access. This flaw affects both cloud and on-premise environments and allows attackers to perform container escape attacks, gaining full control over the host system. Once inside, they could execute arbitrary commands or steal sensitive data. NVIDIA Container Toolkit is widely used across AI platforms and comes pre-installed in many virtual machine images, making the issue especially concerning. According to Wiz Research, more than 35% of cloud environments are vulnerable to this exploit. The vulnerability stems from a failure to properly isolate containerized GPUs from the host, allowing containers to mount parts of the host file system or access runtime resources like Unix sockets. Rated with a critical severity score of 9.0, attackers could exploit this issue by using specially crafted container images, allowing them to interact with the host system. Wiz Research reported the vulnerability to NVIDIA in early September 2023, and a fix was released on September 26th. Users are strongly advised to upgrade. For now, detailed technical information on the exploit remains private to allow organizations time to apply the fix. This week, representatives from the 68 members of the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative are gathering in Washington, D.C. to address the ongoing threat of ransomware. Despite the initiative doubling in size since 2021, ransomware attacks have also nearly doubled in the same period, according to U.S. intelligence. The fourth annual summit will focus on disruption operations and launching a fund to help countries hit by cyber attacks. There will also be discussions on the intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. U.S. officials, including Deputy National Security Advisor Ann Neuberger, emphasize that ransomware remains a significant problem, with Russia serving as a key haven for many attackers. Although the decentralized nature of ransomware groups poses challenges, it also prevents any single group from dominating. The summit aims to bolster efforts to dismantle infrastructure supporting ransomware, and disrupt the cryptocurrency flows that fuel these operations. However, officials acknowledge that the incentives for attackers remain strong, as many victims continue to pay ransoms. The Pentagon has requested that lawmakers reject a proposal mandating an independent assessment for creating a separate cyber service, according to sources cited by Breaking Defense. This appeal was submitted to the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, arguing that a similar assessment was already required in the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. The idea of establishing a separate cyber service has been debated within the Department of Defense, with some officials warning it could create confusion and overlap with existing military cyber efforts. While proponents argue it could streamline operations, others caution that separating cyber functions from broader warfighting missions might hinder effectiveness. Lawmakers will revisit the issue when crafting the final version of the 2025 NDAA after the November presidential election. CISOs DNA, an Indiana-based genetic testing and facial recognition service, exposed sensitive data, including biometric images, personal details, and facial DNA records, due to an unsecured WordPress folder. The breach, discovered by cybersecurity researcher Jeremiah Fowler, involved around 8,000 records accessible without any security protections. These records contained names, phone numbers, emails, racial identities, and personal notes, even including data on vulnerable individuals like newborns. The incident didn't involve a misconfigured database or cloud server, but rather an unsecured folder titled Facial Recognition Uploads. Fowler promptly notified the company and the folder was secured, but the exposure raised serious privacy concerns. Experts warn that such sensitive information could be exploited for phishing, blackmail, or identity manipulation, emphasizing the need for companies to implement stronger data protection measures, including proper configuration and security for online storage systems. Public accounting firm Wright, Moore, DeHart, Dupuy, and Hutchinson, WMDDH, is notifying over 127,000 individuals of a data breach that occurred in July 2023. The breach exposed sensitive personal information, including names, social security numbers, driver's license and passport numbers, financial details, and medical data. While the breach was detected in July, it took WMDDH nearly 10 months to identify the affected individuals. The firm is offering 1 year of free credit monitoring and identity theft protection services to those impacted. The Department of Justice and SEC have charged Robert Westbrook, a 39-year-old British national, with hacking 5 U.S. companies. Between January 2019 and May 2020, Westbrook allegedly accessed corporate executives' email accounts to obtain non-public information about earnings announcements. He then used this information to trade securities, profiting $3.75 million. Westbrook was arrested in the UK and is awaiting extradition and faces charges of computer securities and wire fraud. The SEC seeks civil penalties, restitution, and an injunction to prevent future violations. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a proposed AI safety bill that would have required developers of costly AI models to implement measures to prevent critical harms. Authored by Senator Scott Wiener, the bill aimed to regulate AI systems costing over $100 million by requiring safety testing before release and allowing legal action for damages caused by these systems. Newsom acknowledged the bill's good intentions, but criticized it for imposing broad standards on even basic AI functions without considering context or risk level. Wiener expressed disappointment, calling the veto a setback for AI oversight. The bill had drawn opposition from major tech companies like Google and Meta, despite modifications made to address their concerns. Cyber resilience efforts are lagging globally, partly because organizations are not involving chief information security officers in strategic technology investments. That's according to PwC's Global Digital Trust Insights report. Polling over 4,000 executives, PwC found that only 2% of organizations have implemented cyber resilience across all areas. Less than 50% of CISOs are involved in strategic planning for cyber investments, limiting their influence. The report urges organizations to give CISOs a seat at the table to align cybersecurity with overall business risk. A disconnect between tech and business leaders is evident, with 66% of tech executives ranking cyber as a top risk compared to 48% of business executives. Additionally, only 15% of organizations are significantly measuring the financial impact of cyber risks. PwC highlights barriers such as unclear risk scopes, data issues, and compliance concerns. The report calls for greater alignment between CISOs and boards to improve cyber resilience and better prioritize investments. Coming up after the break, Tim Starks from CyberScoop describes the House Homeland Security Chair's proposed cyber workforce bill. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Maltego. Cyber, physical, fraud, and foreign influence threats are evolving as we speak. Automation alone can't catch them all, making human insights indispensable. The Maltego platform lets your analysts connect and analyze seemingly unrelated data by bringing OSINT, internal logs, threat feeds, and more into one place. Visit www.maltego.com to discover how Maltego supercharges analysts with real-time intelligence to identify and mitigate threats, keeping businesses and the public safe. That's www.maltego.com, your all-in-one platform for OSINT and investigations. Identity architects and engineers, modernize your identity systems with Strata. Integrate legacy apps with any IDP, ensure seamless identity failover, and apply MFA without touching app code. Strata offers robust, efficient identity management, reducing tech debt and enhancing security. Gain peace of mind and operational efficiency with Strata's comprehensive solutions. Visit strata.io/cyberwire, share your biggest identity challenge, and enjoy free AirPods Pro. Optimize your identity solutions today. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. And our thanks to Strata for being a longtime friend and supporter of this podcast. It is always my pleasure to welcome back to the show Tim Starks. He is a senior reporter at CyberScoop. Tim, it's great to have you back.
Hi, Dave.
So, CyberScoop, you're living up to your name over there because you got a scoop with an exclusive about the House Homeland Security Chair releasing a cyber workforce bill. What's going on here, Tim?
Yeah, whenever I'm talking to people, I'm always selling them on the CyberScoop part of things. I'm like, it's in the name. Please give me the name. Please give me scoops because it's in the name.
Right.
So yes, there was a bill that the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee released this week, and the committee actually did approve it as well a couple days later after we wrote about it. It is what Mark Green calls his top legislative priority, not just top cyber priority, but his top legislative priority. And in an election year where the House Homeland Security Committee has jurisdiction over border security, you can see that means that's a pretty big deal. And in this case, what this bill does is create an ROTC-like program for community college, technical schools, aiming to get people with those skills-oriented abilities to, in exchange for scholarship, come work for the federal government, state, local government, tribal, territorial government, for a couple of years and pay it back that way.
Well, as you mentioned, this comes from the House Homeland Security Chairman, Mark Green, who's a Republican from Tennessee. I mean, why do you suppose he's setting this as his top legislative priority?
This issue of the cyber workforce is it's really just so important. It feels, as a journalist, one of the things I've struggled with over the years is trying to communicate to people how big a deal this is, because, it's human resources basically, right? And I don't, nothing against human resources, but I don't think people get geeked out about it the way they do about Iranians hacking the presidential campaigns.
Hmm.
But it's such a huge deal to have the people you need to do this, and we don't, and we never have. You and I have been around long enough to know that this cyber workforce gap has been 500,000 people in the United States for a very long time. And so I think he recognizes that with the threats we face, the top thing we could do, the number one thing we could do to fight it, is to have actually skilled, talented people working to fight it.
And why come at it from this direction, to have this be styled after ROTC?
Well, in his case, he is a former military man, so he thinks about things that way. But another thing that I think matters here is, you can keep trying to get people who are four-year college degree students. You can keep trying to get very, very highly specialized and educated people, or you can look to a different set of folk that we haven't taken advantage of as much, who maybe for whatever reason, economic factors or whatever kind of factors, that a four-year degree is not an easy or workable thing. And another thing to point out is that, with a lot of these things, you probably don't need a four-year degree. So you're looking at a talent pool that is very available, is very exploitable, who can get very high-paying cyber jobs off a two-year degree, and in theory, this could work. This is, one of the other reasons the other things we've seen talked about as ways to fill this gap are looking to recruit women more. The workforce is very male. The cyber workforce is very male, and women make up 51% of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And you look at the workforce is very white, and so if you look at the number of minorities who you can approach, I mean, there's sort of different angles to approach this problem and tackle this problem, and this is a theory that if we go to these people who we have not been turning to, we have not been recruiting, we've not been training, this can really help with that problem.
One of the things that caught my eye in your story was how this bill directs CISA to put people on the pathway to getting a security clearance and to do it quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another huge problem. I mean, there's so many there's so many elements of this workforce problem that are huge and difficult to overcome, and the time consuming factor, the backlog of security clearances is another pretty constant thing that we have to deal with in this country. This says, okay, we've got someone who is in this program. CISA, start the security clearance process for someone a year out. We know they're coming, so let's get the process started. It could take months and months and months for this to happen under normal circumstances. So if you get the process started earlier, the thinking is, good. Let's get them in the workforce right away instead of having them sit outside and wait for a job to materialize because they have to wait for the security clearance to happen.
What is your sense of the likelihood of this bill going anywhere?
So that was an interesting thing I thought about when I was writing about this. It's September 27th, or as we talk, it's late September, and it's an election year, and Congress ain't going to be around very much more this year. So I question whether it can happen this year. It's possible. I think one of the things that we didn't discuss in the story that could be a problem for this bill is Senator Rand Paul on the other side of the chamber has been holding up any bill that does anything that gives CISA any power. He is one of the people who is skeptical of the agency. He has talked about this view that a number of people on the right have, that it was somehow involved in censoring right-wing speech. There's been a court adjudicating on that says essentially, no, not really. The Supreme Court has ruled on this. I don't know if that will make Senator Paul ease up on his concerns about this, but it's a problem in the near term that they're going to have to overcome. I've not talked to the Senate side about this yet. They did get the Senate Homeland Security Committee did get its own workforce bill through just a couple months ago, but taking a little different tact on this. And that tact was to not have CISA do it. It was to have the Office of the National Cyber Director do it. So that may have made things easier on their side to get that bill through. So we'll see what happens. I think that, it's not the kind of bill that is overly partisan. I could see it getting through the House side relatively easily, as long as you put it on the suspension calendar and say, let's just move this fast. I could see that happening. I think the question becomes what Senator Paul thinks of it.
Yeah. All right. Interesting insights for sure. Tim Starks is senior reporter at CyberScoop. Tim, thanks so much for taking the time for us.
Thank you, Dave.
Now a word from our sponsor, the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, who's currently seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Interested U.S. citizens should consider the Department of Defense's Cyber Scholarship Program, which covers tuition, required fees, textbooks, and a laptop, as well as providing a $32,000 additional annual stipend. Apply for the spring 2025 semester by November 15th and apply for this scholarship by February 1st. Learn more about both at cs.jhu.edu/MSSI. And finally, not that any of our listeners would do this, but a recent survey by Broadband Genie revealed that 86% of broadband users have never changed their router's default admin password. The survey showed that over half of users haven't even bothered to tweak their router settings at all. Worse still, 89% of respondents have never updated their router's firmware, leaving them potentially open to cyber attacks. The fix is simple. Change your router's admin password, update the firmware, and maybe give your Wi-Fi a snazzy new name while you're at it. It's not rocket science, but it could save you from a digital disaster. As Broadband Genie expert Alex Toft warns, leaving defaults in place is like handing over the keys to your house. Again, not that any of you would do something like that, but, your friends and family, maybe help spread the word. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute to a regular segment on Jason and Brian's show every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K CyberWire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karp. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.